Well, I think growing up in Zanzibar, which is in a way a concentrated cosmopolitan society.
This series of presentation is part of the Awakening Project.
And at that time, then I joined here. It was Government Indian Junior.
Welcome to the third panel discussion of the Awakening Project of the Khoja Shia International Muslim Community. Awakening Project is a grassroots-led project that looks at the challenges facing the community and how our foundational institutions of family, madrasa, and member can overcome these challenges. You will find more information on the Awakening Project of Khoja Shia International Muslim Community website and various YouTube presentations. By the grace of God, the Awakening Project has reached 10-year milestone. One of its current ongoing project is to have conversation with key members who have contributed so much to the Khoja community's growth and beyond in the last 25 years or more. In this panel discussion, I would like to shift the focus of my conversation to the role of our Jamaat in Europe and North America. Historically, Jamaat is the strongest institution in our community hierarchy that has survived over 130 years since the formation of our first Jamaat in Zanzibar. In Europe, Canada, and the United States, our Jamaat have been in existence for over 50 years now, serving our communities. In their early formative years in the West, our Jamaats organized using the structural blueprint that existed in East Africa. They adapted and evolved in the new environment, which obviously was religiously plural, multicultural, and where boundaries are not religiously defined. So in the early years, when the community faced immediate challenges, they used their experiences gained in East Africa to overcome them. Khoja Shia Internationals in Canada, in United States and Europe have 50 years now of living history, and like any other co-citizens, have benefited immensely from political and economic stability, as well as easy access of knowledge and information, widespread use of social media and technology that is obviously available throughout the world now. At the same time, challenges that accrues, particularly the value conflict arising out of hate or misunderstanding that has affected the Muslim community and by extension, our own Khoja Shia International Muslim community. There are also challenges internally within the Khoja Shia Internationals with the structure and functions that we have inherited from East Africa or from East African experience survive as we move more into 21st century, especially now that we have almost 2 generations in the community who were born and bred in the West and may not associate themselves with identity that early pioneers came with. Also, with wide availability of knowledge on Islam, on internet and social media, many in our community are eager to know scholarly opinions on many subject matters, and these differing opinions need to be respected maturely and respectfully. With such easy access is now available, readily available, if I may say so, there are also challenges with regard to what and how to impart a subject matter from the member and many others that I cannot list here. So to discuss these and other important matters relating to our community in Europe, Canada, and United States, this evening I have with us a panel of 3 Jamaat leaders from Canada, United States, and Europe. Welcome all of you, and Salamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa
Barakatuh. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for taking time out, all of you, and to participate in this panel discussion. I will be introducing each of you, and I'm grateful really to all of you for your time. The fundamental purpose of this panel is for you all to share your experience of your journey in the community and your thoughts on challenges and their solutions as to how we may overcome them. In a way, this panel discussion of this nature as well, I believe will make our viewers think critically about how we should evolve our community to a better level. So in our panel today, we have Al-Hajj Habibbhai Meghjee, president of Toronto Jamaat. He was born in Mwanza, Tanzania, and came to Canada in August 1981. After doing high school to grade 13, he went on to obtain BCom degree in 1987 from University of Toronto, and then qualified as chartered accountant in 1989. Ever since qualifying, he's working with Deloitte, which is the largest professional services firm in the world. He worked in Brussels, Belgium for 2 years, and currently he is a partner at Deloitte. His contributions to community service is also wide-ranging. He was a treasurer of As-Sadiq Islamic School in Toronto for over 4 years, treasurer of Toronto Jamaat from 2011 to 2015, secretary of Toronto Jamaat from 2015 to 2017, and currently president of Toronto Jamaat. He tells us that he has been passionately serving Hujjaj who go for Hajj every year from Canada for many years. Welcome, Habibbhai.
Thank you, sir.
We also have Al-Haj Mahmoud Dhalla, president of Orlando Jamaat. Mahmoud Dhalla was born and raised in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. He received his higher education in computer science at the University of Texas at Austin. He has been in the technology industry for the past 20 years, including over a decade at Microsoft, building global software like Windows and having several patents to his name. He has also been involved in incubating several technology startups in Europe and Australia. Mahmoud has lived in Austin, Texas, Seattle, and London, UK, before moving to Orlando, Florida in 2012, where he has resided ever since. He was part of the founding of the Austin Jamaat, a member of the board and executive committee, as well as the Madrasa administrator of Seattle Jamaat, and is currently serving as the president of Husseini Islamic Center of Florida in Orlando, Florida. Mahmoud is also World Federation Counselor representing Nasimco since July 2020. Mahmoud tells us that his biggest accomplishment, according to him, are his 15-year-old Jabir and 12-year-old Salma, mashallah. And the final member of the panel we have is Al-Haj Rasool Bhamani, president of Leeds Jamaat. Rasool began his career in 1994 as an audit trainee with a Leeds-based accounting firm after completing an honors degree in European Business Administration firm from the University of Bradford. After much consideration, Rasool changed the careers in 1998 and began working in the food industry. He founded Mysome Authentic Recipes, an Indian finger food production firm. In 2017, he sold the company and went into the construction industry. He has since created a real estate development firm that has overseen the planning and execution of several projects. He began volunteering in community-based activities when he was 16 years old. In 1997, he was named project coordinator for Leeds Jamaat's new Babul Ilm Multipurpose Center. From 1997 to 2004, he oversaw the construction of community center, and from 2015 to 2016, he oversaw the commissioning of an extension to that center. He currently serves as the president of the Khoja Shia Muslim community of Leeds. He's a co-ed counselor and a co-ed counselor at the World Federation. He is also the co-chair of Leeds Faith Forum. To begin with, may I say that as a community, how proud we are that we have talented leaders serving our community, mashallah. I'm also pleased to say, somehow it has worked out, by the way, that in this panel we have presidents who are serving our communities of differing sizes, so they will be able to also speak from their own unique experiences and challenges. Now, the format of our conversation will be that there are questions that I will pose everyone, and there are questions that I will ask one of you to answer, and others then can give their further reflections and allow an open discussion on the matter. Ultimately, I would like you all to be candid and honest with a view to moving our Khoja and wider Muslim community forward with unity and positivity, inshallah. So having done this rather long preamble, I think it was necessary. I want to begin by asking each of you to explain to our audience what inspired and motivated you to become a Jamaat leader and serve the community, and at the same time explain the demographics and size of your Jamaat, how you see its purpose, and key milestones the Jamaat has achieved in the last 10 years. So in essence, what I'm asking you is what inspired you to be or to leadership and service to the community, and then talk about demographics, size, purpose, and milestones that have been achieved in the last 10 years, whatever you can reflect. So I would start here with the biggest Jamaat that we have, at least in Canada, which is Habibbhai. You represent Toronto Jamaat. Have a go, Habibbhai. Let's see how you started your journey. We'd love to understand that. MashaAllah.
Thank you, Siftenbhai. So, of course, having born in Moanta, a small community, we always used to help out when we are very young boys going to the mosque and madrasa, serving niyaz or serving sabil, water, etc. Alhamdulillah, fast tracking that to Toronto, having come and on the university degree and then being an accountant, I started my journey with a Sadiq Islamic School, which was a school, Jamaat-based school. Alhamdulillah, today we have 750 students, right from JK or Montessori all the way to grade 12, we call it here in North America, which may be close to O levels in the UK. Very flourishing school, Alhamdulillah. But when the Bathurst project was completed, of course, it was a huge project, as all of you are aware of it. There was significant debt as of 2011. And I thought being an accountant, I can add value to the fundraising skill set, making sure that the processes, the accounts are all properly written up and we can show full accountability, transparency, etc. So I would add value. So I moved from a Sadiq to take on the treasurer role of the Jamaat at that point in time. Alhamdulillah, it allows blessings, generosity of membership, both in Toronto, North America, worldwide. Alhamdulillah, we have paid off the debt within just 2 to 3 years of us taking over, alhamdulillah. In terms of the Jamaat size, so we are around 5,000 heads, we would say members. However, we do cater to approximately 7,000 participants in the Toronto Jamaat. One unique feature of Toronto Jamaat, which you may appreciate, is we do have 3 operating centers. So for example, we have the Jaffrey Community Center, which is mostly familiar to all of you, which is the Bathurst Center. Then we have the Masumin Islamic Center, which is near the airport in the west. And then we have a third center called Rasoolbhai Community Center, which is in Hamilton. I believe most of you have been to Toronto and you must have gone to Niagara Falls. So the Rasoolbhai Community Center is halfway between Toronto and Niagara Falls. And as soon as you cross the big bridge, that is where we have the center. So we have 3 centers, but it's all operated under the ISIG of Toronto. So alhamdulillah, we have kept that unity as opposed to having smaller Jamaats that can become their own structure, etc., and governance process. So alhamdulillah, we have been lucky that way. Now people ask me, Habibbhai, how did you count the 7,000 heads you're telling us? And the simple and easy way I tell people is that on Eid day, all of us have to pay $10, Canadian $10 zakat of Eid al-Fitr. Within one day, within maybe 3-4 hours, just before Eid Namaz, we collect almost $70,000 Canadian within a few span of hours. So this tells me that there are around 7,000 heads which we are catering to. And Sithenbhai, I think going forward, I just want to plant a thought here is we do have memberships. All Jamaats have membership. But the way to the future is pay as you go. People will now, through technology, through internet, they listen to whoever speaker they want to listen. Yeah, alhamdulillah, people are attached to Jamaats for socialization, other programs, burial schemes which we have. But most of our younger generation are well-to-do. They are professionals. They have enough life insurance to pay for their burial. So if they like a program, they'll come, they'll donate towards the program. We're always self-sufficient in Muharram, Ramadan, our fundraisings. But the way to the future may be pay as you go. So, but overall, more or less in terms of the capacity of the Toronto Jamaat, we are catering to around 7,000. And I was speaking to Shiraz Walji of Africa Federation. And I remember this conversation in Karachi, Pakistan, where we had a World WWF Expo. And he cornered me and he said, Habibbhai, I have news for you. So I said, what? He says, you're going to be soon taking over Dar es Salaam Jamaat in terms of heads and membership, because people in Dar es Salaam, especially young kids, they come to study in UK, Australia, Malaysia, but we are seeing significant number of students coming to Toronto now to study because the fees are much cheaper than the UK as well as the US. And then once they graduate here, they like to, of course, stay here and study here, and then they can sponsor their parents. So looking, projecting 5 to 10 years down the road, we think we will be, much larger than Dar es Salaam Jamaat in the near future. I'll stop here, maybe just not taking too much of.
No, thank you very much. Very candidly done. And also, as I understand it from what you have just reflected, that your rise to the presidency was really evolutionary in that sense. You were treasurer, then the secretary, and of course, you understood the functioning of the Jamaats, particularly being a treasurer. So it was just the outcome, natural outcome. Thank you, Habibbhai. I will go now to Mahmood. Mahmood, you can enlighten us with what inspired you to community service, and also something about your Jamaat's demographics, milestone, etc.
Thank you. Yes, I grew up in Dar es Salaam as well. One thing I missed out is I went actually to our own Islamic school there called Al-Muntazir Islamic Seminary. I graduated from there in my A-levels. Being part of the community and seeing that the community was where we all belonged together, right? I've always had that affinity for the community, to be able to deliver or to be able to give back to others, right? What we receive. We didn't have to worry about growing up in Africa, schooling was one of the big challenges, right? Having a safe environment for school, a school that I graduated from, that I was able to get a degree in the United States, right? And be able to be accepted. Those things were quite a big accomplishment for our community. So that brings, and I keep telling people about this all the time, is focus on the little ones. When they're schooling at the mosque, they'll come back because that's where they remember, right? And I'm a prime example because I was schooling there. It was all part of the whole, our principles was malim this and malim that, right? So for us, it was quite familiar. And that was one. And I give a lot of credit to my father, Marhum, who always used to tell me 2 things. He said, you support the leaders that you have, even if you have to tell them that you disagree with them on one point and another. Worst thing you can do is cause a divide, because that is just not helpful. And when things don't go your way, or you want to make changes that nobody will, then don't just sit and complain, do it yourself. So if there is an opportunity, it behooves us to stand and say, I did my part, right? That portion of doing my part is what led me. So when I came to Orlando, I was relatively new compared to everybody else, having come here in 2012. Folks here have been here for 20 plus years, right? But the community was going through some challenges, right? And there were some divides and a lot of the baggages. I felt I was in a unique position. And the third thing for me is, when you know Allah has given you some abilities, right? Everybody is given a unique set of abilities, right? There are certain things I'm horrible at, certain things I'm good at. We all have ours, right? My father used to tell me, if you have been given that is a rizq for you, and Allah is going to hold you accountable. So if you have been given a leadership ability, but yet you are shying away because you're afraid of this or afraid of that or afraid of this backlash or that backlash, you are going to be accountable and asked. I gave you leadership ability. You were naturally able to lead in school, in your work, and everywhere. But when it came to mosque, why didn't you? Allah will ask you for accountability. So for those 3 reasons, and wanting to make a change, I was here at Orlando. I've always been involved in community service, but here, especially here in Orlando, I took a backseat for a while. But when the time came and there was a need, and I said, there is a need, it almost becomes wajib on me. And if I don't stand up, then I'm accountable. So I stood up and I said, I will give the community an opportunity. Then if they say no to me and they don't elect me, I get the thawab regardless of whether I do the work or not. And that was actually my pitch to them. I said, please don't elect me, because then I still get the 3 years of serving Islam, right? That's my inspiration. I'm a huge believer, and you will see me even in my proceedings elsewhere in World Federation and everywhere else. Is let's support the leaders we have, let's maintain the peace, and then if we want to make the change, let's stand up ourselves and make the change. I keep saying, beating that drum every single time to every person who comes and says anything. So that's my motivation to do community service. About our Jamaat, we're about 450 families, I would say, 1,500 people. We probably serve around 2,000 to include other Shia communities, right? Other Shias outside of Khojas. The Orlando community wasn't as big, but there was about 20 years ago, there was an influx of a couple of very large businesses from New York that moved to Orlando. And I think everybody knows about that. That brought quite a few families in one go. That spurred the whole initiation of the Orlando St. Islamic Center, the change of the Constitution, and so on. And so that spur has now taken off. That's one. Two, our economy has recently grown, right? And three, the downturn of economy elsewhere, where people stopped making as much money in the West Coast, and the West Coast started becoming more and more expensive, and New York and so on. And we are seeing a lot of influx. Even until now, we're still growing. At least a couple of families, one family a month, 1-2 families a month. And right now in COVID, it's slowed down. But before that, we were having 1 to 2 families moving into Orlando. And if things settle after COVID, we expect to grow even further. So Habibbhai, I'm in the race as well with you. So yes, that's a little bit about our Jamaat. If I'm missing something, please let me know.
No, that's fine. I think you are now building a new project in Orlando.
Yes,
that could be a milestone for you, presumably.
That will be a milestone. We have just gotten approval to build a $10 million, $10 to $12 million project, which includes a gym, and I'm happy to talk about it on the reasons why we are doing what we're doing, if the time allows.
Yeah, we'll come into that, because when we look at challenges and all that, some of these reflections you will draw upon in any case.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Now we understand, Mahmood, what motivated you to the leadership position. Okay, so now we have Leeds, I believe, is the smallest Jamaat out of the 3, and Bhamani heads the Leeds Jamaat. Rasool, perhaps you can enlighten us as to how you sort of presumably settled in Leeds, which is really up north. I think one of the northest Jamaat in UK, and every time you have to travel to London, and I'm sure you get tired when you have to do that. This is a pre-pandemic time. Anyway, Rasool, go on. Tell us about how you got inspired.
So yes, Leeds is probably the most northern Khoja Jamaat that we have in Europe. It's or in the UK. It's about 200 miles away from London north. Before my inspiration or my motivation, what interested me in Jamaat work was my parents. So I was born in Uganda, and just after I was born, we were thrown out, the exodus when Idi Amin came in, and we then had to migrate. So we all came over to London. Initially, we were put into camps, and then at that time, or even now, London was quite an expensive place. And being refugees, Dad decided to take a tour of the UK to find out where he could adjust, where it would be reasonable with the funds that he had at that time to settle. And he eventually ended up in Leeds, and he managed to, at that time, with the funds that he had, purchase a property where we could live in. So that's how we sort of came from Uganda into Leeds. It was a purely settling Leeds at that time was a purely economical decision. When we got here, there wasn't a Jamaat, like many places. So we used to have majlises initially at people's houses. But before that, I remember when I was very young, on a Thursday night, my grandmother and my mother, they used to have hazris at home. When they used to recite hazri, and that sort of got us all going on a Thursday after school, before dinner time. We all got together in the sitting room we sat down and mum used to recite Hazri, Hadith Kisa, and that's how we did it. And then we started, a few other families joined us or got together, some from Uganda. And at that time, Leeds, even now, Leeds is a university town. So there was a lot of students which came from Africa in particular. And we had a good sort of presence of students, mostly from Kenya, I think at that time. And then we started meeting at people's houses. And then we bought a small terraced house in Beeston. And the Jamaat sort of got set up there. My motivation into working for Jamaat became at that point. It sort of was embedded at that point. You know, the seeds were there from the family. You know, like we used to carry out all these works. And when we didn't have a center, we used to travel to Peterborough. It's around about 120 miles from Leeds. And at that time, to make it feel like Muharram, we used to take our own alums and things, you know, to Peterborough, join them, and then come back. And once the center happened, and at that time, there were a couple of deaths before our center opened up, and one of the deaths was my grandfather. And the difficulty that we encountered for the burial, because there's no one there to give you that support, so the family had to do everything itself. And the challenges that we faced was immense. Once we established our center, and once we got some sort of a madrasa going, and started offering some of the services like burial, we actually saw the difference it made. You know, the people that lived in Leeds you could see, you know, in a state of distress, straight into not in a comfort, but in a much more better position. And when you saw these people, and when they came back to you, and when they thanked Dad and other members of the Jamaat, the leadership of Jamaat at that time, it really inspired and motivated me personally, because I saw that Jamaat was making change to people's personal lives. You know, we saw kids coming to madrasa, and I was part of that madrasa, and, you know, affecting a real change in the way they were being brought up, in the way they were being, the interest in Islamic studies, Islamic education was being developed in them. And we were actually making a change in people's life, and that is what motivated me to work harder and get involved in community work. So that's how my inspiration and motivation came from, seeing that we made real change in people's lives. As a Jamaat, we're about, membership-wise, about 40 families, but Leeds is a multicultural center. So whilst we don't have many Khojas here, we do have other Shia Ishnashris from different denominations. We have a large Indian community, we have a large Pakistani community, we have a large Kashmiri community, and they all attend our centers, mostly in Muharram or big nights in Ramzan. The madrasa, we've got in excess of about 75 students who attend our madrasa, and the demographic of our community is more youth-based. So we've got a larger proportion of youth compared to our elderly membership. The biggest milestone was the building of our Babul Ilm Center, multi-purpose center. And the other milestone that I'm very proud of is the interfaith activity that the Leeds Jamaat has engaged in, to the point that when we first started operating from our center, Leeds City Council had imposed a condition that we couldn't operate in excess of 10 o'clock in the evening. And that obviously was a problematic situation for us, especially in Ramadan, when we had to serve our amals and everything. And at that point, the synagogue opposite us actually lodged, I wouldn't say a complaint, but they actually had a discussion with the Leeds City Council. You know, why are these guys forced with this condition when we don't have this condition? Why are they being discriminated against that? And it was just so refreshing to see that members of other communities actually backing on our side and fighting for our rights so that we could have equal sort of be able to carry out our services in the same way that they were. So I think that's building those relationships with our neighbors and with different faiths, I think is a very big accomplishment for Jamaat of Leeds. So those are some of the points.
No, I've given you a very good enough introductory time to submit the presentation. Now I want to sort of go into the challenges facing Jamaats. But before I do that, having listened to all three of you very carefully, it would have been very good if I had time to go into an insight into how you make decisions. Particularly, would there be differences between, say, a small Jamaat, a medium size, and a large Jamaat? Whether you have a horizontal type of decision making because you're a small Jamaat, Rasool, you may have to do a lot of things yourself. Whereas in Habibbhai's case, maybe delegation is a very important, efficient way of. So he has a vertical sort of way of working, and I would presume Mahmoodbhai's would be both horizontal. You have to get in, and also a bit of vertical. So it would have been, but I don't have time. So I'm going to go into the challenges facing Jamaats. And what I want you to do is, and I'm going to ask on Habibbhai this time around, what would you describe, Habibbhai, as the key challenges facing your Jamaat and Jamaats in general today? So let Habibbhai answer, and then you can also get in, so that we don't sort of just repeat ourselves. Habibbhai, just reflect with us. What would you describe as the key challenges facing your Jamaat and Jamaat general today in Canada, perhaps in the West?
Yeah, thank you, September. And I have thought about this very hard. And I would summarize that I think the biggest challenges we are facing is alternative thinking, as well as conflict, I would say, maybe it's a difficult or a hard word, with our other values, like say Canada has lots of values, right? This month was the month of pride, etc. So we are living in a country where everything we need to tolerate, we are respectful of others in terms of their rights, their values, etc. But I believe that if we as a religious-based organization do not address this very strongly in our foundation of our upbringing of our children, our youths, etc., I honestly believe we're going to have challenges down the road, maybe 5-10 years down the road. I think we need to make sure that our core foundation is extremely, extremely strong. So the values which we inculcate in our madrasa or in our Asadiq school, etc., are strong enough to be able to, for our children and our youths and our, even sometimes our elders as well, to see that yes, we are living in a country which is very liberal. They all have values. We all have to be respectful. We all have to be tolerant with other views, other lifestyles, etc. But we really need to maintain our core values and our religious values. So I think that is the most biggest challenge we are facing as a community. The rest, in terms of building structures or programming, we are honestly big enough. We can maintain that. Economic situations are reasonably good in Toronto. We are not challenged by financial stress because, alhamdulillah, we don't have any debt. We just need to make sure that we have honestly enough funds to run our programs, our initiatives, etc. Yes, with the COVID-19, we had a little bit of challenges with some of our members, for example, temporarily losing their jobs, etc. But we are such a big Jamaat that we can manage all those. We have 2 social counselors fully paid to maintain mental health of our community. We have 15, 16 subcommittees. We call them to run different programs or different initiatives, different ideas. So all that is good. But I honestly believe thinking ahead, the most significant challenge we are going to be facing, and we have started facing that already, slowly, is the balancing the requirements of religious-based values, practice, etc., with alternative thinking as well as other challenges that are out there, etc. Now, I want to just end with a positive note. Working with a firm like Deloitte, okay, we have our talent proposition is, your work your way. So Alhamdulillah, we started this 5-7 years ago. You can work from home. You don't have to be physically in a particular place. However, the point I'm trying to make is at our offices in downtown Toronto, we had a nice recharge room where you can go in any time of the day to do your exercise, your yoga, but we had, Alhamdulillah, a fully dedicated prayer room. There was a prayer room for the men, there was a prayer room for the ladies. Inside the prayer hall, we had a full wudu facility, like our Sunni brothers. So you can wash your feet as well if you want to. So Alhamdulillah, the facilities are really there to make sure you can practice your religion 24 hours. We had now, they're catering during our lunch breaks, they're catering for halal food as well. So all that is really good. The worry I have is when people are also exposed to the other side of the Canadian values and Canadian, thinking. We need to make sure people understand the boundaries between religion and others. I'm not saying that we have to tolerate and that's all fully fine and respected. But if the bombardment of media and others overtake our strong foundation, I think our youths are going to be significantly challenged going forward and in the future.
Thank you, Habibbhai. You have set the scene, and that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to set the scene for further discussion down the line. We will come to the solutions and how the community can deal with the problems exactly, both externally and within, which I will describe as we go along. Mahmood and Rasool, do you want to add anything to the preamble that Habibbhai has said? Anything additional?
If you don't mind, yeah, I would.
Yes, fine. But if it is different from what Habibbhai has,
it is quite different actually. Okay. And sorry, I don't mean to. When I say different, I don't mean to discount what Habibbhai is saying. No. In my reflections, right, from my childhood till now, right, I have seen, and I've always questioned this, that our community gravitates a lot towards our rituals, our Islamic rituals. I'm using the word rituals with some air quotes on it, right? There was a very valid reason back in Zanzibar when we started that the Islamic rituals were the one things that would actually draw us towards our Islamic values, right? But Islamic values and Islamic rituals are quite different. The challenges we're having as a community right now is trying to impose those rituals on children who don't understand. I'll give you an example of what Americans are doing, right? If you're a golfer, there's something called the First Tee program. It's a charitable organization, so to speak, that teaches little children who cannot afford to have their own golfing to learn how to golf. But their mantra is, you learn life through golf. You learn how to be honest, how to play in a team, how to do so many different things, right? Through golf. If I look back at our history, our Prophet's Masjid, when it started, was not a place for just doing amals. It was a place for business. It was a place for social. It was a place for a lot of other things. What I see is that as long as we're still stuck on trying to make our masajids a place for just the rituals, we're losing it. We're losing our children very, very fast, right? We need to think broader and say, how do we teach our children how to be honest through volleyball? Did the ball go in or out? That is a way to teach them how to be honest. If that's how it's going to teach them how to be honest, so be it. I don't think I was at the age of 15 ready to sit for a one hour majlis. I don't think they are going to be, especially them when their minds are running so fast with social media and all of these other devices. That's one of the big challenges I see in how to adopt our communities to be beyond just serving for the rituals. And I'm not trying to discount that, right? The conservatives will still want it. They still want their matams. They still want their everything. And I'm not discounting them. All I'm saying is, what else, right? What else? When I met the youths, when I first became the president, I met the youths and they asked me, what do you want? When I asked them, what do you want from me? And then they asked me, what do you want from us? I said, here's what I want from you. I want to make sure, and I told them two things. One, I want to make sure that you guys are such a tight group that if one of you gets bullied at school, they're not worried because they are part of this community, because they have another set of youths that will be there for them. They will protect him and help him. That's part of the being a part of a community, right? So they're like, so you don't expect us to come to mosque and listen to majlis? I'm like, that's sunnah. I want you to stop playing volleyball at azan time. Just pray maghrib and go back. And they said, why? I said, because as-salatu tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. As long as I can get you to just do your prayers, the rest will come, right? And as long as I can get you to be here and bring your affinity. So if especially in the West, I think now it's global, because the Western culture has permeated everywhere. Good, there are lots of goods about it, but if we don't consider us to be kind, what are we building? We should be building, becoming kind neighbors. We should be becoming the businessmen with integrity, right? We should be becoming the people who will stand up to oppression. These are the things we should be building in our communities. Amazing to have amazing reciters. That's great, and I'm not discounting that, right? But why are we not focusing on the rest? And that is why you suddenly start seeing the divide of the church and state, so to speak, within our mosques as well. People say, I want to be a professional. Well, still, yeah, but you can be an Islamic, a professional like we all are, and still be a good Muslim. How can you do that inside our centers and be okay with it, right? Why I mentioned Baraza night one day, and I got a big flake for it. And I said, what's wrong with having a Baraza night? Just people just sitting, just having conversation. They're at least not at the bar. They're not at the pub. Let the kids come here, right? So this is what I feel is one of the biggest challenges, how to break out of this, and not say we are discounting it, but include a lot of other things.
Right. So Habibbhai gave a very good external one. You have given a very good internal challenge that we have to grapple with. Do you, Con Rasool, have you got anything else to add?
Yeah, I think from a smaller Jamaat's point of view, I think structurally there's two issues. Reliance. So we're relying on the same volunteers to carry out those core activities, which can become burdensome and can become very challenging. Secondly, finance is another issue. Being a smaller Jamaat, it's the same pot from the same people that the money is coming from. Those are two structural challenges which we're facing. Coming back to the point that the challenges that both Mahmoodbhai and Habibbhai mentioned, alternative thinking. I don't like to use this phrase, alternative thinking. I rather use different perspective rather than alternative thinking. It's a different perspective. Whilst it's a challenge because of our success. The whole issue about different perspective is becoming a challenge to us because of our success. Because we've moved to the West, education is readily available. We've now become a more educated society than we were maybe 50 years ago, 60 years ago. We have got access to information. We've got access to different types of speakers. So people are able, we're not getting our knowledge from the member itself. We are looking at obtaining knowledge from different platforms. And that's where that is then forming our internal ideas and different perspectives. So I presume we'll be discussing that a bit later on, where we can add more to it. So whilst it is a challenge, it's also an opportunity, and it's also a challenge that has arisen because of our success. That's my sort of opinion on that.
Well, thank you, Rasool. And I think that all three of you have presented really immense challenge for a community living in the West from a differing perspective. Now, what I want to do is I want to share some data with you because this is very important from the perspective that Mahmood and Rasool and Habibbhai gave. You see, Awakening Project carried out a survey where before it carried out a survey, it thought deeply as to what fundamentally are the institutions which, if we remove them from our Jamaat, the Jamaat doesn't have any meaning at all in that case. So we recognize that the three very important institutions are the family, our madrasa, and the member. This is our existential institutions, basically. So we did a survey, and we asked a question, are the core foundations, the family unit, member, and madrasa able to sufficiently overcome the very challenges that you have more or less describe that we are facing today? And I can give you the answer. That 21% said yes, our institutions are equipped to deal with the challenges of our time. 78, almost 80% said no. Now, based on this, what do you think and Mahmood has given a very good account of the needs of the youngsters in some ways. But I just want to make a general question to all three of you, and I want a brief answer if I may, because there is more to be talked about as we go along. What do you think the needs of young people, women and elderly are? And do you feel your Jamaat or Jamaats in general adequately cater for their needs, particularly in terms of augmenting the family values, delivering the madrasa in a way it should be, so that at age 21, there should be a young man understood the Islam and prepared to go forward with proper iman and all that. And of course, then the whole idea of member providing us with the relevant contemporaneous solution to our challenges by the scholars. Do you feel, the survey said 80%, how do you feel as a president, do you think that the needs of the young people, the women and the elderly are met within these three institutions? So shall I ask one of Mahmood, you start, and then Rasool can join in, and Habib afterwards. Mahmood, you start. You start.
I thought we were always going to have Habibbhai start.
No. You start, Mahmood, this time, and Habibbhai can come.
Yes.
Rasool comes next, and then
we like to learn. We like to learn from our seniors. You know, from
Mahmood, you have a go. How do you see that? Yeah.
Yes.
Bearing in mind what the survey said. Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword, right? The survey is correct, but it is correct because it is correct. Because people don't want to come forward. What is the Jamaat? The Jamaat is made up of people, right? When 80% of the people are saying it's not equipped, it's because 80% of the people are sitting at home and being the silent majority and waiting for somebody else to do it, right? So every time someone says it's not equipped, yes, but what part have you played to try to make it equipped, right? So there is, the thought process is there, the willingness is there. The issue there is that we have a small minority of very vocal conservatives who want to continue pulling the old stuff back, that are now making a whole bigger majority of more subtle people not wanting to come forward. How do we combat that? It's not something I can do. It's something the silent majority have to do. That's why we put pressure on voting. A lot of voting, because the silent majority can speak on that behalf when that happens. At the end of the day, the community needs to come forward. The community needs to come forward and say, we want to make these changes. Like, we want to hire 2 people full-time for our mental health. We want to build a gym, right? Somebody will come forward, but at the end of the day, if the community is not well prepared, they need to think of it that way, that yes, it's not prepared because we aren't prepared. And the way to make it prepared is to try to break some of these barriers that have traditionally been in our communities, in our Jamaat for a long time, where there's a small minority of vocal people that would just kind of drag everybody in whatever directions that they want, right? I'm being candid, since you asked me for me and my candidness. So so it is a double-edged sword. So you're right, we may not be, but because people need to come step forward and do it together. Together we can do everything. All
right. Okay. Now, thank you. What about Rasool? You want to add anything on top of what Mahmood is saying?
From Mahmood saying, no, I concur with what Mahmood is saying, and one of the things I'm also a teacher at the madrasa as well, and one of the problems that we've had is engaging youth to come to attend our majalises. And candidly, when I was sort of engaged with them and asked them, why don't you come to a Thursday night majalis? Is it the timing, or is it what's the issue? And they say it's not challenging enough. One of the points that came out from students, it's not challenging. The member is not challenging us enough. We don't get inspired by coming and listening sitting for an hour and listening to some of the majalises. And I think that was something that came across from a number of students. As a parent, when I go to mosque and on the way back, I normally ask my children, just give me 2 things that you've learned from today's lecture. And sometimes even I struggle to pinpoint 2 points that I've actually learned from the mimbar. And that seriously is an issue. And what we've done in Leeds is we've brought in something called faith in action. So now what we tend to do is whenever there's a major event, we try to put that in action. So it tells us that what have we learned. So for example, we're coming up in the next few days, Darul Ard, the laying of the earth. So we've now asked our madrasa, our youth, that how can you put that into practice? And one of the things that we're doing this Sunday is a tree planting ceremony. Together with, in the UK, there's a national thank you day. This is basically thanking all the main frontline workers during COVID to say a thank you to them. And we're actually planting a tree and becoming environmentally more aware. So I think those are the things that we're sort of trying to do to engage people and try to make that. But I certainly think that we need to look at the mimbar and how the lectures are being delivered from the mimbar and how they can inspire more.
Rasul, I think you now that you have brought that, I want to go into that once we've heard Habib, because I think that all 3 of you can then develop the Jamaat's handling of the member and resident alim, because I have something to say about that and see what you have to say. Habibbhai, you want to add anything to what Rasul and Mahmood have said?
Yeah, yes, I want to. And I think, September, you have hit the nail in terms of family, madrasa and member. But I think, honestly, it's going to be a work in progress, okay? Since the Awakening Project started, we looked at the member, honestly, but I want to just be fair here, honestly. When you ask a scholar to address, and I'm talking about Toronto here specifically, where in the crowd we have a 2-year-old and a 94-year-old, to come up with a topic which everyone can take away something is not an easy task. When we started saying, okay, we just don't want the lecture to be monotonous, it has to be interactive. So we did introduce a couple of mentee questions during the lecture, okay? So it's a work in progress, but alhamdulillah, we think that member has to stay. It's our culture, where this is how we conduct our majalises, but we have supplemented the member with lots and lots of interactive sessions with very, very relevant current topics where you can interact with the scholars, you can have, subgroups, etc. So I think it's an evolving, way of doing, but we have to remember our culture. This is how we, for example, commemorate the majalis of Imam Hussein. Yes, content is something which we can all work on, but in order to have complete seminar type majalis, it doesn't work. You can have a seminar on the topic of Imam Hussein or whatever topic you choose, where you can have a group of 50 to a session, so everybody has an opportunity to participate. Madrasa, I think honestly, it has evolved. We were at the WF, all 3 of us were at it. I think the next phase in terms of post-secondary is something which we all need to think through, so we can, alhamdulillah, continue to build September from, let's say, I would say 16 to 18 over to 21, as you mentioned in your question. As far as family is concerned, we have so many programs in Toronto through our Jaffa Support Survey. There's Mummy and Tots program. There is a, family relationships program, how to manage your anger, couples, sessions. So there are so many things which can be done and we continue to do. But the most important thing we all of us have to do is, with the advancement in technology, with the Zoom classes, there is lots and lots all of us can do and share best practices and seminars to continue to develop ourselves and our families and our youth and our children. It's going to be there's no right or wrong answer. We're all making progress. Some of us are faster, some of us are a little bit slower, but with the technology-based solutions, I think we can, all of us throughout our Khoja world or throughout our Jamaats, we can learn and share best practices. We have participants logging in from Dar es Salaam nowadays with Zoom classes. Yeah, there are so many people who have flexibility in hours. We have participants from India, Pakistan, in any of our sessions, alhamdulillah. So It's a work in progress. We all have to look at it. But we have enough, like for our majalises, we have youth program, for example, we have youth majalis in Muharram. We also have on our big Wafat Khushalis, we have programs for 14 and under. So our lecturers, our youths take that away and come up with a content for Wafat Khushal, which is geared towards the children of that age. So they can do some painting, picturing, as Rasoolbhai mentioned, what are they going to learn from that night or that event and practice in their daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you, but let me give you some statistics here, because but by the way, Habib, I fully concur that it is work in progress. Well, just imagine what's happening at the moment today. We did a survey conducted a survey on the member, and we asked, is the member an independent institution that promote open and critical thinking on religious and non-religious issues? Because today the mindset of our young people, there is ideologies there, and I think that the members must provide some solutions and some sort of answers to what is happening in their mindset. But 65% answered that the member is largely a controlled institution that doesn't promote a open and free critical thinking on religious and non-religious issues. No interaction and all that. I know you brought up a point about 94 and all that. And then, of course, only 22% believe that member is an independent institution. And 12.2% answered the member is to some extent. But majority of our Khoja grassroots youngsters understood that in no uncertain term, there is a very passive institution which does not encourage them to come to the Imam Bara. Now, couple this particular survey with what happening today, we see a range of different opinions on the member, and a number of scholars using Zoom and YouTube to share their knowledge. May God bless all of our scholars. In an informed world where everyone has access to information, and all of us, including our youngsters, are used to critical dialogue in universities and workplaces. Given this statistic and what I've just ascribed, how do you see, I mean, I know it's a work in progress, but how do you see the member evolving? Particularly when, if I can ask you this very, very important question. Do you feel having a different opinions among scholars enriches the community with a better understanding of Islam? It is a good thing. And if it is a good thing, that's fine. But if it is not a good thing, then perhaps you can reflect. I'm now going not to Habibbhai, now I'm going to do Rasool and Mahmood. Mahmood, having seen the survey, what the community is thinking about the passivity of member. What Habib has just said, which also makes sense. It's work in progress. We have got to evolve. But at the same time, there is this survey where bulk of our youngsters are not attending. They attend some nights, but not regularly. So we're losing our youngsters like that. Now, coupled with that and pandemic and Zoom, with now scholars developing their own sort of audiences, how do you see the role of the member evolving now? The Jamaats have to do something. It cannot just leave it like that. So Mahmood, Rasool, and then Habib, final point, and then we go on to, I want to discuss still the structure, the regional federation, world federation bit, because I'm very conscious that you want to leave at 9:15. Can you give us more, 15 minutes more?
Okay, inshallah, let's see.
But let's see how things develop. Because I've got that area to cover, and then the future vision. So if we can cover this thing. So let Mahmood, who wants to start? Mahmood or Rasool?
I'll go first.
Okay, Mahmood, you go, and then Rasool, and then, so if you can be brief, so we can go on to the regional world and afterwards, okay?
So a couple of things. Yeah, a couple of things. I think when we say member, we're being synonymous to the scholars, right? The institution of member, I think, has evolved since the time of the Prophet. If you read Najul Balaga, if you read the Prophet's sermons, you always see people standing up, shouting, asking questions. It was always a dialogue. It was not, I think it turned to become monologue based on our culture. So there's a lot of reading that can, so Mimbar as a podium, right? It has different flavors, right? I think what we're talking about is our scholars and how they are reacting in our community, right? My humble opinion, and as a layman who does my best to read whatever I can to understand and reflect on it, diversity in opinions is very, very enriching for the community, except when it is at the core principles, right? The issues that come to our community is when we have scholars who come and not do their due diligence in their learning, and then shake the core principles under which the community is operating, especially religious principles. Those are core principles that I think that is not the right forum to discuss. However, variety of thought at the opinion level, at the understanding level of the same core principles is actually good, right? You look at a hadith, everybody agrees that this is a musnad hadith. If you have multiple interpretation of, hey, maybe this is what it was meant, it is enriching. But if you look at the hadith and say, I'm throwing this hadith out because I believe it doesn't make sense, now you're going at the core principles. Do that in Bayt al-Kharij. You see what I mean, right? Because you have an audience that is not equipped to be able to understand that. However, an uber point before that, and I'll give you an example of what our current resident alim is doing and what we have asked them to do. We've done a couple of things, right? Our resident alim actually prepares some Slidos where people can just ask questions. He prepares some questions. Everybody has a phone, so they just get on the phone, and most of the names on that Slido is all youths, because they're sitting somewhere in the car outside. They will still log in. They're doing their baraza outside, but I know when Slido time comes, they all go Slido, and then it gamifies it. But it's a forum it's a platform they understand, and they'll answer a couple of questions. They learn a little bit. Right, this same Maulana, he's a young guy, he's in his 20s, whatever, and he used to play Xbox. So I said, I told him, pick a nice game that you think is a safe game. Join our youths, and he's planning to do that. So he's planning to have a game night with the Sayyid, and as they are gaming, he can talk to them. See, you need to. Member is a concept, right? The idea is how you reach them. And if he's reaching them in their own way, they can get more comfortable. They can ask him questions. The gaming thing is an example. You don't have to do that, right? We introduced, over summer, we introduced darts on Thursday nights. We play darts. Trust me, there are more youths now on Thursday nights than seniors, because they're interested to play darts afterward. So it's thinking outside the box, and that concept of member, of parting with the knowledge, has to think outside the box. I understand our culture is there, and we need to keep it, because our culture has brought us where we are, and we can't just abandon it. We need to evolve it a little bit, right? So that at least people feel that, okay, I am connected to this. It's not so far apart from my day job, from my school, from my friends, that I actually feel alienated by being part of that. So that little example, like a Slido, they do Slido at school, they do Slido at mosque, it's perfect. They get it, they understand. So that's, I think it needs to evolve, but it needs to not completely change, but evolve in just to a certain level. And the diversity needs to be at the interpretation level, not at the core principles level.
And do you have a criteria and a protocol where you can decide who is the right scholar for your Jamaat, or do you have to go somewhere and have make sure that they agree before you call them, or do you make the decisions yourself?
So right now, because it's a very subjective matter, right? Unless we go to Sayyid Sistani for everything, it becomes a very subjective matter. So what I do over the last 3 years, because we have so many more other issues, right? If we see somebody who's had some level of disagreements with some other scholars that are a little bit, off topic, or people have raised concerns about it, we sometimes do avoid. Why? Because our community is facing a lot of different challenges. We don't want to burden them with yet another kind of, tearing apart in disagreement of why do you bring this guy versus not there, right?
Do you then, Mahmood, go in to look into that this disagreement may not be fundamental as it makes out to be?
It's worth for someone to do it. I haven't had to, because I draw the line a lot.
But you think that that's the right way, so that you don't sort of isolate the guy forever?
You may not, yeah. So I now, if I were projecting myself to like a very an organization, let's say 5 years down the line, where we are more matured, like Toronto or London, right? Where we now everything else is sorted, we are kind of running on autopilot and things like that. Then yes, you want to have a small committee that actually does, of scholars that actually does some research and figures out if these.
But you are open-minded about things. That look, if a scholar has got a bit of issue, he should be at least given a chance to talk about and reflect with you as a president of a Jamaat.
Yes, I would say, and also we have to be humble to understand that only Allah judges people, but at the end of the day, we're not scholars, so we will rely on some other scholars to kind of give us the advice on what to do.
Thank you, Bhamani. Thank you very much for your insight. And also the same questions that I posed to Mahmood, also please reflect in your answer. Rasool next, and then Habib.
Thank you, September. Yeah, I can relate to the statistics that you've just come up with. And I am of the opinion that differing perspectives is beneficial to us. And the reason I say that is if you go back into our history now, I'm not sort of what little knowledge I have, and I'm sort of speaking from that perspective, is that you hear from the member and you read that for a long time, for several years, Imam Ali was being abused from the member. But whenever you read that, you never sort of looked or read where Imam Ali sort of said, I don't want you to attend that particular place. I don't want you to do this. I don't want you to do that. The point I'm trying to make here is that when we as a society advance, when knowledge becomes so readily available, we are going to have people, and when you go to universities, you talk about philosophy, you talk about theology, when all these discussions are happening, you will have people which will have different opinions. Now, when Mahmoodbhai said that when it comes to the main core principles, that's where we draw the line. But like the question that you posed, it's very difficult to draw that line. And the other point then becomes in, where do you have this discussion? Because the public who has this mindset, who has this information available to them, the only place they would come is the mosque. And this is where those questions will be answered. So while it's uncomfortable, it's a requirement that we need to have the expertise to be able to have those difficult sessions and answer those sessions. I don't think we can run away from that. And if you look at WF and the Madrasa of Excellence, millions of pounds have been spent into that. We have spent millions of pounds in this structure. And what is more concerning to me is the intolerance that is being shown by certain scholars. Only recently, I think there was a debate about one of the du'as, and one of the scholars, in a very rude manner, you could rebut that argument. There's no problem with that. But in the way that you say it, in the Quran, it talks a lot about building societies. And it talks about that there will be differing opinions and differing perspectives. But when you're challenging those, there has to be an etiquette. We can't have scholars cursing or dissing other scholars on public platforms. I don't think that's right. The whole concept of banning people, if you ban them here, where will they go? The world is not just limited to Imam Bargas. In fact, the number of people that attend our Imam Bargas is far less than those people who join us online. So by whilst I agree entirely with Mahmoodbhai, But we need to have a platform where we can have these discussions, where differing views can be talked about and challenged. And I think by just saying, banning them or not giving them a platform is not the answer. The other thing which was very concerning to me was this whole issue, again, at the recent conference that we discussed, where we were looking at the issue of speakers, and there's an advisory setup that is going to come in where Jamaats can actually, or resident alims can actually sort of touch into that. Now, if people perceive that as a controlling factor, then I think that's going to have a negative impact. It again comes back to the survey that you come up with. How many people say that it's not a free place? So I think we really need to think very carefully as to how we develop our strategy. And I think the responsibility in here, I think, also lies very much at the scholars, with the scholars, that when they are rebutting each other, it's done in a considered manner rather than what we've been witnessing and seeing on social media, because then it just becomes a laughing stock and it puts people off then even to engage.
Thank you, Rasool, for that elaborate answer. Habibbhai, you can also give your input here. As I understand it, Habibbhai, you proposed a very, if I remember rightly, in your submission in one of the public platform, that the scholar, we must arrange the scholars to come together. This is my understanding of it. I don't know whether you had proposed it, but I recollect that you had done so to mitigate some of the things that Rasool is saying and Mahmood was saying. Please go ahead, Habibbhai.
Yeah, thank you, September. So I wanted to bring that point up. So everybody understands that there'll be differing viewpoints, and this is the coronavirus, okay, has shed the light even more, that even within doctors, there's difference of opinions about the virus, for example, the protective measures, what we need to do, etc. So scholars will have difference of opinion, there's no doubt, but there are ways to discuss about those opinions, debate, and youths can participate. And again, I'm bringing, this is now the time where with advancement in technology, lots of things can happen. You don't have to be physically in person. Yes, to the extent that we can, we should. So, but one other thing I want to bring on a practical level from a Jamaat perspective, we need to maintain unity. We need to run programs. I'll be open and share this with you. So one scholar says, we don't need to do dua iftitah. It's not valid, for example. The other scholars are saying, no, we have to do. So as a Jamaat, what should we do? Remember, right? So there are challenges on a practical level that we need to maintain. So of course, we are a big Jamaat. We do have a resident alim, Maulana Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi. We have 4 scholars in the Toronto Jamaat. We have Maulana Rizvi, we have Sheikh Jafar in Masumin Center, we have Sayyid Sagirus, and in Razavi Center, we have Sister Tairabai Kasmali on the ladies' side. So we have 4 scholars, okay? So we want to make sure that all these 4 scholars are aligned. We cannot have 2 scholars on this side and 2 scholars on that side. So we have to understand the practicality. We can all debate the issues or in a seminar, etc., and discuss our different viewpoints and all the theological arguments, which is all fine and respected, but it has to be in a forum set up for that. September, with all due respect, I honestly believe those theological arguments cannot be just done on the member, like in a 1 lecture or in series of 12 lectures, because I've seen numerous times a scholar comes on for the 12 nights, okay, says a few things based on his research and his arguments, fully respected, but then people have more questions. This scholar now has gone. And then for some reason, Maulana Rizvi now has to address this, and then he would clarify things, what are the alternative arguments, and then we move forward as a community. I'm fully, like, scholars can have online sessions, they can invite anybody with the technology, they can discuss, they can debate. But one thing I've mentioned this at the WF conference, and I've challenged Sheikh Murtaza Ali Dina, that we need to have quarterly learning and development programs with our scholars, with all the resident alims of the Jamaat worldwide.
Interject here?
Yep.
When you say all the scholars of different opinions and backgrounds coming together, not of only one sort of interpretation, but varieties
Correct.
of interpretation from our own community who can come together and decide on the consensus. Is that what you mean?
Correct.
Or do you think only certain type of scholars coming together? Do you mean only certain
All
type
scholars
of
are welcome.
scholars or all the scholars should be invited?
Just invited to discuss a topic, right? For example, whatever topic is, and there'll be more challenging topic coming up in the future as well.
So all the scholars, you mean?
All the scholars.
All the interpretation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. So I just want to, before I move into the World Federation and all that, because I need to discuss that as well. I just want a yes or no answer on this. The current physical structure and aims of Jamaat are, we have a traditional Jamaat with a prayer hall, which Mahmood brought it up. Rasool has also brought it up. You have also brought it up. A lecture is given, space of madrasa, perhaps a place of sports if possible. However, today, many of us use social media, watch programs on YouTube and Netflix, go to a cafe, youth meet online and form relationship, and are intellectually engaged in a world of information. Do you feel that apart from the core physical structure of a Jamaat which we have, can we extend it to include mini cinemas where halal or good movies can be shown, a cafe where families can meet in a modest environment for purposes of marriage, internet facilities, games room? Do you think that these avenues should now be explored in a much more detailed way so that the social life revolves within the community, not just marriage and death and Ramzan and Muharram, but beyond that to actually having a good facility for cinema, cafe and all that? Do you think that you can envisage those days coming? Just quickly, yes or no answer to me.
We already have it.
I'll get it. Oh, you already have it, Mahmood.
We do movie nights.
Oh, yeah, mashallah. There you
Popcorn
are.
movie night.
So you think it will extend on to other things as well?
We have no choice. This is how we are going back to how the Prophet did it. It's a bazaar there. The mosque, the masjid was a bazaar where everything happened there. The support for the life was there. I'm sorry to say this, in a maybe good intention, our forefathers somehow got diluted to become a place for rituals only. It needs to go back.
It needs to be expanded.
And just it's a grassroots movement that naturally we push it back. We don't need to force it. We don't need to push it slowly. We just need to make sure we're not conservative and we're not stopping ideas, and we are at least trying things.
Sorry,
Mahmood, thank you. Rasool, you have anything to add?
Leeds actually is today having a movie night. And the way we do it is that over the last 6 Jum'arats, we talked about, after the issue in Israel, we talked about Banu Israel in the Quran. And today we're actually ending up the series with a movie named Gaza. So what we tend to do is we look at a topic, and then if there's a suitable movie which then brings that whole series together, we sort of end with that, and we call that a movie night. So we are doing that. But again, going back to our Mahmood's point, where our forefathers, Lavington, when Nairobi Imambara was built, the Lavington project, they actually had a restaurant there, and I think they still do. So they actually have a restaurant, and they have a running track or a walking track where people come, they'll socialize, and then they'll go into this restaurant, and they'll meet, and I think that's, it's been there from Africa, and this issue of Baraza, where Mahmoodbhai, it was happening in those times. I think it's just bringing it back here in our times. And again, if you look at my parents' time, and at that time there was a lot more social interaction. Receptions, weddings were mixed weddings at that time. I'm not saying that we should have that now as well, but there was a lot more social interaction. Whereas now it's a bit more, obviously with people becoming more aware with religious climate, that that things have moved, slightly changed a bit more. So I think it's definitely we need to bring that social aspect in there, and I think that's the growth of our community going forward.
Habibbhai?
Yeah, so September, I think definitely the answer is yes, with maintaining all the Islamic principle and values. In Toronto, we have organized a picnic, for example, for 1,000 people or more. We all went, we took buses, Maulana Rizvi was there. We have done that. Raptors, our basketball team, was in the finals and we won the championships, I think 2 years ago. We had organized viewing of the game right in our Jaffe Community Center. We have watched the Khoja movie in downtown Toronto Theatre. So all things are possible. We just have to maintain the Islamic principles and we can move on. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now thank you very much. Now I want to come to Jamaat's relationship with regional and world federation. I'm going to ask you a very simple question to begin with. What are the benefits of being a member of the regional federations such as Khoja or Nasimco, and going forward, and the World Federation? Now I want something very tangible here, and then I will have some further question. But can you be brief, just briefly, off the top of your head? What are the benefits of being a member of the regional federation? First of all, Habibbhai, what do you think are the benefits of being a member of the regional? Suppose there was no regional federation, does it matter?
Okay, so that's an excellent question, September, and I'll be open and candid. Toronto is such a large, Toronto is such a large Jamaat that we can do without Nasimco and without WF, 100%. But that doesn't mean we don't want. We want to be part of Nasimco and WF because we like sharing ideas and contributing to the other smaller Jamaats and the World Federation as well. So we have been the backbone of Nasimco in Toronto. The Secretariat office is in Nasimco, is in Toronto, like in our Jaffe Community Center. We work very collaboratively with the leadership team, with Arifai Jaxi and the predecessors as well. We want Nasimco to flourish, okay? And same thing with WF. For example, we manage the COVID donations to India, for example, very recently with WF, right? We donated $160,000. So we all want to work collaboratively. And I think, which I raised the issue at the WF level, is honestly, WF has to rethink its purpose and what it's trying to do because times have changed. Regional federations have to rethink their purpose and what are they trying to do, because with the internet, right, there are so many programs, but that's not their role. Sometimes they organize a majlis or seminar, but that's the Jamaat's role, I personally believe. And so I think we all three of us, the Jamaat, the region, and the WF, have to rethink its purpose because resources are scarce. We don't want to do duplicating efforts in different parts of the world and for our communities. We can all share in the best practices. So if there's a mental health seminar, we can run it 2 or 3 times, but all Jamaats don't have to run it and put resources. Yes, there may be local expertise and local challenges, but there's so many things we can learn and do collectively to maximize the output and impact for the community around the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your candid expression, Habibbhai. Mahmood or Rasool? Rasool, you want to go as the smallest Jamaat first and then the medium size? What do you think is the benefit of being a member of the regional federation, a small Jamaat? How do you think you benefit?
Okay, I think for Leeds in particular, it's a support network. When it comes to issues of madrasa training, it's a support there for us. Sharing root practices with other Jamaats, that's another benefit for us. I think certain some of the programs that they host, such as mediation programs, and now they started a commercial mediation. Whilst there was a mediation as far as matrimonial mediation, where now they've moved on to a commercial mediation initiative, whereby if any member of any Jamaat has got financial disputes or commercial disputes, then there's a mediation facility there. So I think it acts as a very much as a support network for smaller Jamaats. And I think that's the biggest benefit as far as regional federations concerned. But I think we need to be relevant. Okay, I was
going to ask you, Rasool, just now, that you can go to Habibbhai straight away, and you can say, well, look, we are brothers in our community, and what stops you going directly to Habibbhai and Habibbhai facilitating all those needs for you? I mean, do we require regional? We have a geographical structure.
We
based on geography, basically. And if you think about the history, Africa Federation is the only federation which actually evolved substantially from Jamaat into regional, because there was no world and geography determined that.
Yeah.
But our mindset then imposed the same structure to Nasimco, the same structure to Europe, and then they did not have a history of evolution into regional. They just before, as you know, we had direct membership at the World Federation level.
Yes.
But we needed to create a geographical structure in a globalized world.
Yeah.
What stops you, Lindy, from going to London and asking for help in London, giving the help?
Nothing. And I think Habibbhai has just showed us.
Habibbhai made a very candid point. He said, but really we. But then I'm just thinking.
Yeah. No, but Habibbhai actually does that, because he said that within the Toronto setup, there's 3 smaller Jamaats, or there's 2 smaller Jamaats where they're actually supporting. So while they're individual Jamaats, but it's actually controlled. So basically, Toronto there is certainly taking certain part of the regional federation's job, the Simcoe's job, instead of supporting the 2 Jamaats that are within that. So
we're just very critically and candidly discussing it. We are not sort of against any of these things. Yeah.
No. But what my point is that whatever it is, whether it's a regional federation, or they have to be relevant. If there's relevance between the grassroots and the federation, then there will be a connection, and then there will be benefit. But if for some reason the regional federation or the world federation goes into irrelevance, then there's a serious problem. There's a serious problem. For example, at the recently convened World Federation meeting, we talked about mental health, and they presented a paper on the mental health, which is very good. The only point was that when the question that I think I posed to them was that, what are they doing to remove the stigma of mental health? There wasn't an answer forthcoming on that. So it's very good having mental health, but within our community, there's a lot of stigma attached with mental health. When people commit suicide, for example, he'll go straight to hell. Or if someone who is suffering mental health will sort of, the way we try to interact with them will be different. So how do we answer those difficult questions? And I think this is where, as far as when you look at structures and we talk about that, I think World Federation historically was more of an institution. It was like an infrastructure, building those infrastructure for Jamaats in the 70s when it first set up. I think now it needs to be a facilitator, and I will discuss that. I'm sure you'll come up to that point. It needs to be a facilitator and a strategizer for regional federations and Jamaats. But the bulk is where the main work that takes place is at the Jamaat level.
No, that's the strongest unit in our hierarchy. Agreed, because that survived 130 years of our existence. Mahmood, I want to pose the same question in this way, though. How does your relationship, particularly Orlando relationship, work? And then I want to ask you, are you obligated to follow the community's decisions of the regional and world federation, even if you disagree with them? What happens if their decisions are wrong? You disagree with them. What is your role in that case?
Okay, so I think the decisions that we make for ourselves internally, we follow our own decisions, our own decision-making process, right? So I haven't had anybody yet try to impose a regional federation or a world federation does not try to impose anything on, say, your Jamaat cannot do this. Well, I don't think that's even in anybody's radar to try to do something like that, right? However, when it comes to a World Federation decision trying to be made for World Federation, and if it is something that I disagree with, I still stick with it, because as I say, I support the leaders, even if I disagree with them, as long as the majority speak. And we have seen it recently. I'm a huge supporter of democracy, peaceful democracy, where we decide together, we collectively decide whatever the route we go. However, we haven't had any instances where anybody has imposed anything on us. In fact, they've just been helpers to us. These regional federations, the World Federation especially, I would not have known Habibbhai or yourself or Rasoolbhai if it was not my involvement in the World Federation and the regional federation and them not being there. So yes, I could we can survive on our own, right? We are alhamdulillah, well-resourced community as well, right? But I see the big role of these federations to be kind of like a web where everybody meets, right? Where everybody meets and gets to know each other and creates forms a network of a united front worldwide. Even if we want to make, let's say we want to make an impact in one destitute area in the world, right? If we do it, every Jamaat sends its own, it can do it that way as well. But if every Jamaat collects it and tells World Federation, this is how we want to do it. Instead of 1 million, we send 10 million, we can make a much larger impact. Similarly, if we're doing it elsewhere, we can collectively change policy. We can control and push policy, global policy towards us, towards
Mahmoud, the question I want to pose, I understand, by the way, the gist of where you're coming from. But just remember that we have a geographical structure. We have Africa Federation, we have subcontinental, we have got Europe. Do we need a geographical structure like that to come together?
I'll give you a very more generic answer.
In a globalized world, where what you described is functionality, whereas we formed ourselves based on geography, not functionality. So it became like I am Nasimco, we are Europeans, whereas our functions may meet. Lindy's function and London's function in many ways are same in a globalized world. And what they want to do is to learn from London so they don't have to revisit things and they can be helped. So do we need a geographical structure of this nature, which can be imposing at times, which can be bureaucratic at times, and which may actually not, and I quite well understand Habibbhai's very pertinent question. Says we need to rethink our role and regional role, and well, in the 21st century, in a digitalized, globalized world, whether in fact we need a geographical structure. Can we not have a direct relationship, for example, where the networking can be better had rather than just a bureaucratic structure? For what purpose? It's just a geographical structure being imposed.
All right, I understand what you're saying, right?
I want three of you to then just have a quick answer.
Right, so my point of view on this one is this. I'm not talking about World Federation as it is today, Nasimco as it is today. What I'm talking about is, yes, what you're mentioning is a peer-to-peer networking structure, right? Where there is no place that holds everybody's string, right? Everybody can talk to everybody else. That has been tried and tested, and it always causes chaos. What ends up happening is imminently, what ends up happening is all of those people who are in a peer-to-peer network will decide to form a small structure that just helps coordinate, right? So I don't think we can avoid a structure, geographical, World Federation, whatever name you want to give it.
May I just say, we had a World Federation at one time, which had direct membership of the Jamaats to it. And so it had a structure.
If that makes sense, all I'm saying is purely from a peer-to-peer standpoint, we will cause chaos. It will happen. And you can disagree with me, it's my opinion. We will need some structure. How deep and how involved and how bureaucratic that structure is, I'm not talking about it, right? Obviously, we talk about relevance, we talk about Khoja, non-Khoja, we need to start thinking about it. A lot of our children are marrying outside. This Khoja may not be as we see it in 20 years, right? So all of these things we need to start thinking about how we are going to evolve this one structure. But our unity is very important. Our global unity and changing policy globally is very important. And for that, we need a structure. We need at least a structure that helps coordinate these peer-to-peer networking that you're talking about. I would not have known Habibbhai without it. That's all I'm saying.
No, thank you. No, that's unity is a given. To all this discussion, unity is a given. We are just thinking in terms of how to move into 21st century and the best way of working, the best way of remaining united, and best way of functioning.
And we can change the implementation. That's fine. We can change the structures, the bureaucracy, all of that stuff has to go through some evolution and natural evolution. And that's, I'm commenting on that, right?
Okay, Habibbhai, who wants to come? Did I talk to Habib first? Or yeah, Rasool, eh? Who's the next one? I've forgotten my Rasoolbhai or Habibbhai, okay. Which one?
Doesn't mind. Okay. Let me go first.
Let Habibbhai come at the end and then, you want to come now, Habibbhai? Okay, fine.
Okay, so September, I just wanted to add one more point. I honestly think we need to reevaluate the structure. I'll speak from a regulatory perspective as far as fund remittances are concerned, and I'm talking primarily on Brampton Accord. Rules are changing big time in North America, where, for example, if you're sending some money to the Simco 2WF to a project in India or Pakistan, there are too many, we should be able to work more effectively and efficiently, because the governments here in North America require immediate reporting back directly from the source. So you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
If we need to, for example, do COVID relief in India, it is easier for regulatory purposes to send money from one country to another, direct reporting with all proper processes and due diligence, rather than going through. So for example, North America to Simco first from a local Jamaat to WF to India Federation to the local charity and distribution. So I think we have to reevaluate, and we are all aligned. I mean, WF conference was aligned to relook, because otherwise with anti-money laundering rules, etc., some of the auditors looking from a different part, they don't understand our structure, our processes, and why do we need to go through so many channels. So we have to reevaluate how we, even from a charity perspective, WF aid perspective, how best to create the impact as fast, as quickly as possible. People are dying. We are still working out our process, how we'll get the money there, right? So we need to rethink and reevaluate our processes from a regulatory perspective as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that particular point as well, Habibbhai. Rasool.
So I think we need to. I concur with Habibbhai. We need to reevaluate our structure, and a couple of points why I feel that's necessary. I think the first thing is governance. I think there are certainly challenges as far as our structures are concerned with governance. So we really need to look at that and make that stronger. The second issue is that when you look at a geographical structure, like you mentioned, you've got challenges there in itself. The name itself presents a problem, because the problem facing India and Pakistan will not be the same problem facing us in Europe or in Canada. So how can you then have a structure, a global geographical structure, but our needs are different from different regions? And we saw that play out to a certain extent at the conference as well. India, Pakistan, Africa to certain instances had a different challenges, a different set of issues that they had to face. Europe and Canada, for example, Habibbhai actually at the start of this particular session mentioned one. There was a big Pride March, or this whole thing about all major banks, all major institutions, commercial institutions are actually supporting Pride. Within our schools in Europe, one of the major relationship and sex education syllabus is about accepting or talking about issues which affect same gender marriages and relationships and all that. So these are certainly different points which may not have the same effect in India and Pakistan which has here. So that itself is a challenge and needs to be evaluated. If we're just as a ritual, if we just sort of continue with the structure because we had it historically, and it's there as a networking purposes, then that's fine, But again, when it comes to networking, I think there's better forms of structures that we can perhaps implement. But if we really want to deliver, and if it really wants to be effective, then I think we need to relook at the setup that we currently have.
Fascinating. I really am grateful for a very candid discussion that you all three gave. The final question I have, and you can be as brief or as much as you want, is let's talk about the future of the Jamaat. How do you see the future of your own Jamaat in, say, 10 years' time? I'm just giving a very short period of 10 years. How do you see your Jamaat being in 10 years? Let's start with Rasool first, and then the biggest Jamaat and Mahmood at the end.
Okay. I think
you in that position, Rasool.
No worries. I think the most immediate challenge that Leeds is facing is the transition from online back to in person.
All right. Can I just stop you there, because I also want you to relate another question, because I don't have much time, and Habib, I know very nicely extended the time. So can you also at the same time if somebody wants to serve in the community, whether in the capacity of volunteer or president or any other position, what advice would you give? So future of your Jamaat and what advice would you give if you combine those two things together?
Okay, so I think the main challenges we're currently facing is how the transition from online platform to coming back to in person, and yet realizing that the next 50 years will be developing. We'll need to have a robust online presence as well as having a physical structure. We'll need to have an online structure in place to cater for our needs. So that's the challenges. Inshallah, we'll as far as Leeds is concerned, I'm sure we'll navigate through the challenges and be in a much stronger position in 10 years' time. Sure. Any advice to anyone wanting to come on as a volunteer or as a leadership role? It's the best thing that you can do. It gives you a lot of personal development. I've developed personally a lot through my role as a president of the Jamaat. My interactions with people that my contacts that I've made through Jamaat has given me personal development as well. And the most important thing is the pleasure of Allah. You work for the pleasure of Allah. And that needs to be your biggest niyat. Your niyat is that what I'm doing is nothing else but for the pleasure of Allah. And if that niyat is saf, if that niyat intention is good, Allah will help you as you navigate your processes. And you'll be rewarded. You will be rewarded in this world. And I speak for myself. There's a number of things that I can share which I've gone through, which I personally feel have had divine intervention in that. So if you are thinking, there's no need to think, but bismillah.
So niyat is so important, as Mahmood drew our attention in the first instance when he started.
Yes.
Okay, Habibbhai?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, September, thank you. So as far as ISIG of Toronto is concerned, in the next 5 years, we will have 2 buildings on our premises at 9,000. One is a 6th-floor seniors building and an 8th-floor condominium building. Inshallah, we're working on the site plan. So in the next 3 years to 5 years, if you visit Toronto, you will have 2 buildings to see. But we are actively looking into long-term care homes. We are putting our bids for long-term because our population is aging. And honestly, when both children are working, it is getting difficult for them to take care of their seniors, especially in the advanced stages when they need long-term care homes. So we are actively looking into that. Inshallah, in the next 10 years, we should have a long-term care home or a couple of floors of a building for the long-term care. All of you have seen our complex, which is housing quite a few number of our families. So it's already a good environment. I would fully concur with Rasoolbhai's comment in terms of volunteering. I would just add that with the pandemic, most companies are now going to be flexible in terms of your working environment, 2 days from home, 3 days from work. So you will have time and Allah will put barakat in your time. Everybody is busy, but when you volunteer for the Jamaat, Allah somehow mysteriously has barakat in your time. You can get things done. So, but I agree, I don't want to repeat what Rasoolbhai said, I fully concur with him. So inshallah, if you do it with a clear niyat to serve, Allah will do a lot of barakat in your time and in your family and your affairs for this world and the here.
What a wonderful advice both of you gave. And mashallah, Toronto was a beacon of light in many ways once they built the bathhouse, because it then had the potential of doing so many other things like what you just mentioned. And I think that's a wonderful progress. Toronto is in that sense quite advanced. So alhamdulillah. Mahmoodbhai.
Yes, over the next 10 years.
Yes. Are you going to bring a lot of people to Orlando?
Yes, our aspirations is with our golf and our weather to take half of Toronto's community over to Orlando.
And Baraza.
And Baraza, yeah.
And the Baraza, so that at least we can have more volunteers. It's a really good truth. One day we had their seniors, the whole seniors, visit us here in Orlando. So we have a good relationship. Over the next 10 years, our community has gone through a little bit of a hiccup, right? So the goal for us now is for this next 10 years to kind of solidify ourselves, build ourselves a new center, right? And change the way we are thinking of our center as not just a place of doing rituals, but combining the spirit and the social and the family life, everything together. We believe that providing a platform allows a lot of people to come forward and volunteer. When you don't have it and there's too many constraints, people feel blocked and they don't come forward, right? We are also looking at senior facility care, like Habibbhai. Probably now that I know you're doing that, I'll come to you and ask for some advice there as well. We need to get some senior facilities going. But again, I want to try to focus on one. Let's finish one in the next 3 to 4 years and then start focusing on that. We also, over the next 10 years, I have a goal, and I'm trying to also get the world, the global community to think about this, is self-sustenance. We want to do investments, and I think we need to go to our Maraji to ask for the homes money to be used in at least real estate investments, significant real estate investments for our communities where there is ongoing passive income that does not require us then to rely on anything except that. Because this kind of investment will bring jobs to our communities as well, so that our community members can actually benefit from it. And the income that comes from it can help us sustain ourselves and allow us to do more and more projects. And it's something that is one of the things that a global organization like World Federation can do for us, is to figure out how. Aga Khanis have done this extremely well. They have investments everywhere that they can be very, very, very well sustained, right? Those are the two major things we're looking at. Obviously, our school is growing, inshallah, so that we'll have that as well. Hopefully, in the next 10 years, our culture as an organization will have changed, where we will have people cheering and coming forward to vote every day on things that they are passionate about, whether that vote is for building a new sports center or whatever have you, right? Because this only shows more and more people coming forward and wanting to have a say, and not necessarily having to be vocal to have a say. My advice to anybody who wants to be or who is thinking about volunteering is, don't expect it to be easy. If it was easy, it wouldn't be so rewarding. Allah squeezes you the most to get the best juice out of the fruit, as they say, right? You squeeze the most to get the best juice out of it. So it's not going to be easy. Let's not tell people it's going to be easy. It is going to be hard. Why? Because you are working, and you are working with people of very, very differing opinions, very differing ideas, and some more passionate, some not. My only advice is just, in addition to all that Rasoolbhai and Habibbhai have said, when you work solely for the pleasure of Allah, and you do only what you think is in the best interest of the community, no matter who is pushing you in what direction, right? As long as you do that, you will be fine, and Allah will take, just like Allah pushed Habibbhai's meeting right now at 4:15 onwards, Allah will push your meetings out to make room for you. And we have all seen this is not once. You will not face any issues. The only one thing that I have seen our community in the past that we need to change, that if you are taking on a leadership role, change your no's to yes. If you want more and more people to come forward, change your no's to yes. Change the way. When someone asks to do something, instead of thinking about how it won't work, think about how it will work. When someone says, first and foremost, don't say bo inconvenient or whatever it is. Think about how you can make it work, because the little things matter to people, and the little things is what sticks with them and what gives them the affinity to the institution. The reason our people are very much sensitive when something happens at mosque is because they have more love. If we recognize it as leaders and say, this guy is upset because he loves the place, and even if it was a small matter and we say no to him, if it is a small matter, don't say no to them. It will bring more closeness. So whoever is taking over, expect it to be hard. Don't worry about what's going to happen to your personal life. It's going to be fine. Allah will take care of it. And change your nose to yes, and inshallah, it'll be fine. And if there's anything I can do, please let us know.
And in that way, Mahmood and Rasool and Habib, there won't be any banning to anyone. They will all be very positive and coming to the Jamaat, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Now,
Thank you.
Listen, I really thank you very much for participating in the panel. I didn't expect the discussion to be as candid as you have been. As a moderator, I have obtained a very good insight and learned a lot from your own experiences and viewpoints. And I'm sure our listeners, once this video, this recording goes out, will also do so. I feel this discussion actually will open our mindset to a dimension of our strength and weakness, as you have alluded to, and as a Jamaat in the 21st century now. And what comes out from this also panel discussion is how our Jamaat, which is the oldest and most powerful institution that has survived under the immense pressure in the last 130 years. First, the break from the main Khoja community and forming our own Khoja Shia Ishnashi Jamaat, then the yoke of colonization, followed by political and economic turbulence, followed by migration, first within the subcontinent and then to Africa, and then many parts of the world. Thus, we have become a globalized community, enduring and overcoming the challenges. And what appears to me from this discussion, how the future survival of our socio-religious community depends on how you, as Jamaat leaders, young, with such a candid way of understanding the challenges, how you going to steer the community forward. So basically the destiny of our Jamaat's institution is in the hands of leadership of your caliber. And I'm so proud of the fact that, we have three wonderful presidents of Jamaat who are willing to put their opinions and their aspiration and their thought process in a very candid way. Hopefully from this discussion, we are now more aware of your thought processes, as well as how we as a community can assist overcome challenges facing us today as a community. But I think above all, what comes out is that you need the support of the community. There's no point in being a passive community, just receiving all the benefits that the president gave you. I think the president wants your support so that we can do even greater things in the days and years to come. So really, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all for participating and sharing your thoughts so candidly. I didn't expect such a candid expression, but good for you. And I hope that we can have open discussion of this nature in a more detailed way in the future. And I'll probably bring you three back in the future, maybe with some specific areas for discussion. So I hope that we can have more of this candid way of discussing and making our community understand the challenges and move the community forward, inshallah. Thank you very much for participating. And Habib, I'm so thankful to you for giving us extra 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
No problem. Thank you. I need to sign off. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And I hope that, you all have, Mahmood, you have a good time on your long holiday. You're going on vacation. Rasool, I think that you're going to sort out those issues that you are dealing with contemporaneously, and I hope that you have success. And let's all meet up again, inshallah, in the future. Inshallah.
Thank you very much for your time and for having us.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Right. Thank you very much.
Express ourselves.
Okay.
Thanks.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks. Alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam. Okay.